A new update just came out of Minneapolis. And I'm not gonna lie, this story is getting heavier by the hour because there's federal agents. They assume as a criminal situation, some extreme, something that makes sense on paper. But then the next detail drops. The man who was killed was a 37-year-old U.S. citizen, and suddenly the entire conversation changes. Now, it's not just what happened. It's how something like this is even possible in the middle of a city, in public, with people recording everything. Here's what we know from what's being shared so far. There was a federal immigration-related operation happening in Minneapolis, and things escalated fast. One man ended up fatally shot. His name has been reported as Alex Pretty, and he was an ICU nurse. That part alone is what's shaking people because you don't picture ICU nurse and shot by federal agents ending up in the same headline. And what's making this blow up online is the video, because video makes everything real. It removes the maybe. It removes the distance. And depending on who you ask, that same footage is being interpreted in completely different ways. Some people are saying the agents acted in self-defense. Some people are saying this looks like an unnecessary takedown that spiraled into tragedy. And some people are stuck in the middle thinking, how did nobody de-escalate this before it turned deadly? Officials have said he was armed, and that's obviously the key detail they're leaning on. But then you've got reports that he was also a lawful gun owner. And people are arguing whether the weapon was even part of the moment in the way it's being described. And I think that's why this story is going to stay big. Because it hits multiple pressure points at once. Federal agents operating in cities. Immigration enforcement tension. Police force questions. Gun ownership questions. And now, a U.S. citizen dead. This isn't something people will just forget tomorrow. So here's what I want to ask you, and I genuinely want to hear where you land on this. Do you think this was a tragic moment that escalated too fast for anyone to stop? Or do you feel like these kinds of operations are becoming way too aggressive and dangerous for the public?
So I want to bring in ABC News' Olivia Rubin, who's been following this now. Olivia, you just heard federal officials now give an update. Can you talk to us, essentially, what is he saying happened at the shooting, and what are the discrepancies based on what we've seen so far?
Well, it seemed like he actually just repeated the DHS statement that was already released this morning, saying that they were in the area to conduct a law enforcement operation when, quote, an individual approached. He had a handgun. They tried to disarm him. He violently resisted. The officer fired defensive shots. And then, as they put it, 200, quote, rioters descended on the scene and also began attacking law enforcement. And in his words, he says today that they are showing support for agents around the country who are, quote, under attack. He did give a few more details about who this officer is. A Border Patrol agent officer, he says, has been 8 years as an agent and who has extensive training. But as you heard in that room, one reporter did raise the question, saying that what he had said perhaps didn't match what they saw on the video, though he didn't answer any questions about whether that was accurate. He just said that it was something that was currently under review, currently under investigation, and that the facts would come to light here. Again, important to note that local officials, Minneapolis police, don't have their own sort of assessment of what happened here yet, as they said earlier this morning, because they weren't actually on scene there when this unfolded. But as we have seen already during these incidents in Minneapolis, such as Renee Good, there were drastically different sort of analyses of what exactly happened there between Renee Good and that officer on both sides of the aisle. So it'll be critical to see how that sort of unfolds with this video, as there is another video here. But again, the federal officials are coming out very strongly to say they stand with the agents who are under attack and that they were acting in defense in this particular scenario.
All right, right now you're looking at live pictures at Minneapolis at the scene of the shooting. You can see that police tape right there trying to block off that area so they can try to maintain some sense of security there. We've been told from former police chief Brian O'Hara that they've labeled these protesters now who have been gathering around this scene as an unlawful assembly. I want to bring in Robert Boyce, former NYPD chief of detectives. Robert, first of all, it's very cold there right now. You're still seeing a lot of the federal officials right now. A lot of the protesters are still out there. The tensions are very high at the moment. What exactly are you seeing right now as this incident continues to unfold?
Well, now it looks like it's Minneapolis Police Department's on the scene. It's kind of like quieted down now. People stand there. You're right, Ike. It looks like it's really cold out there. But it looks like there's a cessation in the advancement of the protesters, where we see that crime scene was held, and we see the Minneapolis Police Department, which we wanted them to come, to really solidify that location and create an outer perimeter, which what I'm saying right now, and that's what we're reviewing. Added on to what Olivia said, there seems to be a single shooter here on ice, and it's and we don't know how many rounds. We're only there to guess, but it looks like we won't know until a total examination of the entire event in totality, exactly what transpired into that officer using deadly physical force. When did they know that gun was there? Substantial weapon, by the way. And it looks like I mentioned a male, Jose Huerta Toma. They were arresting him when this individual, who's unknown, male white 37, came in and interrupted and said something, and then it all spiraled from there. That's what I got from this. A little more information, not complete, but certainly more than we knew about 20, 30 minutes ago.
All right, Elizabeth Newman, former Assistant Homeland Security Secretary. You just heard federal officials give an update on the incident. What's your reaction to that, Elizabeth?
Well, once again, we're watching DHS officials set a narrative before the investigation has even started, and that concerns me. The appropriate way to handle a situation like this is to say what we know preliminarily, that there were shots, that somebody has died, federal officers were involved, and we will let the investigation tell us the story. And instead, what we are hearing is an immediate defense of federal law enforcement, which I appreciate that federal law enforcement has been under attack this last year. I mean, we saw the chief try to run through a number of incidents that have happened to federal law enforcement. It is true. It is a very volatile moment to be a federal law enforcement officer, especially from DHS right now. But we do not know what happened yet. And for him to assert that this individual had an intent to conduct a mass attack is basically what he was asserting. He was saying there's 2 loaded magazines, and therefore he had planned to kill law enforcement officers in some sort of premeditated act. I mean, we have no information to be able to back that up. And so it's very clear that the MO here of the administration is to set the narrative before the facts come out. That just leads to further distrust. That's going to further lead the people of Minnesota to not believe any results that come from an investigation if the feds are in charge of that investigation. It's just pouring more fuel on the fire instead of letting the investigation run its course and then presenting to the public the results of that investigation. I'm very disappointed that really this is coming from the administration. It's not necessarily a reflection on the men and women of the federal law enforcement, but the administration is using this to set a narrative before the facts have come in, and that is not how our government is supposed to work.
Yeah, you did comment about the administration. I want to get on that. Let's go back to ABC's Olivia Rubin. You're saying now that we have a response from President Trump at the moment.
The president has just posted on his social media platform. It's the first response that we're getting with him. It's quite lengthy. It seems he is sort of echoing the same tone as the rest of the federal government in showing support for the officers here. He said, quote, posting a picture of the gun that the Department of Homeland Security released, saying, quote, "This is the gunman's gun, loaded and ready to go. What is this all about? Where are local police? Why weren't they allowed to protect ICE officers? The mayor and the governor called them off." It's then going on to sort of blame local officials, and then going on to say the mayor and the governor are inciting insurrection with their pompous, dangerous, and arrogant rhetoric. So certainly, again, we are seeing some of the political attacks lodged against local officials in Minnesota that we have seen from the president and some of his administration officials as these clashes have gone on. Again, we have talked about this contentious relationship that is played out between the federal government and the local Minneapolis and Minnesota officials. Again, a number of those Minnesota officials are currently under investigation. ABC has previously reported by the Trump administration, all as this investigation is just merely hours old since this 37-year-old man was shot and killed in Minnesota. But again, this is the first response that we are hearing from the president after a White House official told us that he had been briefed on the situation. Again, you heard some of that rhetoric there, showing support for the law enforcement officials there, the federal law enforcement officials, posting the picture of the gun that this victim was allegedly carrying, and then also talking about the rhetoric from some of the local leaders there, like the governor and the mayor, who also, Ike, have called for the president to help tamp down some of this rhetoric there.
I want to bring in Richard Frankel, former FBI special agent in charge. Richard, you're seeing federal agents come out right now, and you heard our former guest, Elizabeth Newman, essentially paint a picture of what happened before the incident can even begin. It's the initial stages of the investigation. And then you hear President Trump come out and call local leaders, the mayor of the city and the governor, saying that they're inciting insurrection. So when you hear this, and when you know that an investigation still has to continue and still has to happen, how do you tamp down the rhetoric at this moment while still trying to maintain some sense of procedure as the investigation continues?
Yeah, what we would do in this situation is just go forward with the investigation. We always said in the FBI, let the politicians and the bosses do whatever they want to do. Let the investigators do what they need to do and have to do. So what they have to do is, it appears that they have done the collection of evidence at the scene. Now they're going to want to start or continue on in the investigation. They're going to want to get every video that they can to see what happened before, during, and after. They're going to want to interview the agent who's involved in the shooting, but all the other agents also who were there at the time, whether they were actually involved in trying to disarm the subject, or if they were able to see what was going on at that time and be able to give, an eyewitness account of what they saw. They're going to want to talk to the civilian population, those who would come in for interviews, and not talk about the rhetoric that was going on, but what did you see, during the potential arrest and then the shooting of the subject. So they're going to want to be doing all of that as part of their investigation. They're also will do an investigation into the subject himself, because they're going to want to see if he did come there with an intent to cause serious physical harm or death to anyone, or was it just that he had the gun in his concealed, and somehow it became unconcealed. That's how the officer saw it, and then everything basically spun from there. So they're going to want to do a normal full investigation of a shooting, just the way they've done, probably hundreds of times in the past. Nothing should be different in this investigation, and that's again where the head of the Border Patrol, the supervisors have to really let their people know that the investigation continues on just like it would on any other day. I've been told that the FBI is assisting in the investigation. I'm sure they'll be doing exactly what I've suggested here. That would be the focus of the investigation, and also the Minnesota Division of Apprehension. They've done shootings in the past where local law enforcement has been involved, so they know how to do these investigations. What the politicians have to do and what the local citizens have to do is let the investigation go forward. And if they're able to do so, hopefully in the future, we will know exactly what happened. Because right now, all we're getting is a lot of different information and intelligence, and we don't have evidence yet. The one thing I did like from the press conference was when the the head of the Border Patrol basically said, we're going to let the investigation go before I can give you more information. So, they did, try to point out their point of view, but it appears that they are going to let the investigation go forward and let evidence make the determination of what happened.